When the ship began to move, Fu Yuchen looked around while the two white bats, unused to leaving Ghost Valley, shyly refrained from hanging upside down. Qin Mu told them they could rest on the roof without alarming anyone and promised to bring them back to Ghost Valley the next day, where he would give them the antidote. After the bats flew up and hung beneath the roof, Fu Yuchen revealed that Qin Mu had deceived them because their poison had actually been neutralized long ago. The later pain had only been used to frighten them into working for him. Fu Yuchu was furious at being deceived, but Fu Yuchen pointed out that without Qin Mu, they would still have been hunted by Ponggong So and his followers. By cooperating with Qin Mu, they had survived and learned that their ancestors were still alive, meaning their white bat race would not become extinct. They excitedly planned to awaken their ancestors and ask them to give birth to females. But then realized that, because of their generations of separation, those descendants would technically be their great-great-great-grandmothers, leaving both bats troubled and unable to sleep. In the ruins, Qin Mu rested against the dragon Qilin while more than a dozen divine statues illuminated the area. He still did not know where they were in the great ruins and would need to fly up during the day to determine their location. Ponggong So also settled down, surrounded by great shamans, shaman kings, and the surviving soldiers of the barbarian D Empire. Qin Mu noticed many strange beasts, including enormous powerful creatures larger than the dragon Qilin in his full form. He then observed three groups of travelers. The first consisted of three eminent monks whose rugged appearances and kind expressions concealed a strong demonic aura. Qin Mu recognized them as monks from Little Thunderclap Monastery, a demon sacred ground known as Little Western Paradise, located farther west than Great Thunderclap Monastery and at the westernmost side of the Great Ruins. Their presence made Qin Mu suspect that they had arrived in the western region of the Great Ruins, possibly even farther away than Roland's Golden Palace. The second group consisted of a young man and woman who appeared to be a married couple. They wore clothing and ornaments characteristic of a different tribe and guarded a magnificent circular carriage unlike the usual square or octagonal carriages used to symbolize status. The woman wore numerous gold, silver, and jade ornaments, all of which were spirit weapons. The third group consisted of about 100 divine arts practitioners with blue pupils and unfamiliar clothing. They radiated murderous intent and repeatedly watched the young couple and their carriage. The dragon Qilin secretly warned Qin Mu that the woman possessed many spirit weapons and that the divine arts practitioners were all extremely powerful. Qin Mu confirmed through his green heaven's eyes that the woman's gold, silver, and jade ornaments were indeed powerful spirit weapons. Ponggong So also investigated the groups. A great shaman learned that the young couple were chi refiners from West Earth's True Heaven Palace and that they were asking for assistance. Ponggong So refused because they had no connection with True Heaven Palace and did not intend to help. Another great shaman reported that the 100 divine arts practitioners were also from True Heaven Palace and wanted Ponggong So's group not to interfere. Realizing that the two sides were involved in an internal conflict, Ponggong So decided not to meddle. However, he recognized the three monks as being from Little Thunderclap Monastery and remembered the long-standing hostility between them and Roland's Golden Palace, whose cultivators frequently captured humans and demons and had even taken demon monks from Little Thunderclap Monastery to cultivate with their souls. The monks also recognized Ponggong So's group but did not immediately act. Ponggong So concluded that their location in the Western Great Ruins meant the three monks should not be left alive, ordering his followers to kill them after sunrise. He then secretly instructed the shaman kings to eliminate the two white bats and the dragon Qilin while everyone else would join forces against Qin Mu the next morning. Meanwhile, Qin Mu rummaged through Ponggong So's peyote sack, examining and playing with its treasures. He tested a huge white bone hammer that released countless skulls and soul flames before drawing them back inside. Then found a sword pellet that released countless hair-thin swords. Qin Mu praised the refinement but remarked that it was inferior to the Dao sword of the Dao master, provoking Ponggong So, who stated that the stolen peyote sack contained only a fraction of the wealth he had accumulated throughout his many lifetimes. Qin Mu then approached the three demon monks and greeted them. They returned the greeting and revealed their identities as monks of Little Thunderclap Monastery. Qin Mu asked whether Little Rulai's disciple, the devil ape Zan Kong, was among them. The monks confirmed that Zan Kong was Rulai's disciple and asked how Qin Mu knew him. Qin Mu explained that he was the heavenly saint cult master and that Zan Kong was his sworn brother. The monks immediately relaxed, introduced themselves as Ding Zhu, Ding Ji, and Ding Ming, and paid their respects to Qin Mu. Qin Mu then warned them that Ponggong So was the Grand Master of Roland's Golden Palace and had 3 shaman kings beside him. 2 at the Celestial Being Realm and 1 at the Life and Death Realm. The 3 monks became alarmed because they had not reached the Celestial Being Realm and could not fight them. Qin Mu reassured them that he would protect them and take them away the next day. Then brought them to rest beside the dragon Qilin. The monks also politely greeted the 2 white bats, who returned their greetings, before sitting down to meditate. Ponggong So became visibly displeased at Qin Mu's actions. Qin Mu continued speaking with the monks about the heavenly saint cult. But they admitted that they had only traveled within the Great Ruins and had never heard of it. At that moment, the male divine arts practitioner guarding the carriage approached Qin Mu and asked for his help. Qin Mu refused, explaining that the couple had been pursued by powerful practitioners and had fled into the Great Ruins. But the enemy had too many strong cultivators for Qin Mu to risk joining them when he already had enough difficulty protecting himself. The disappointed man returned to the carriage and spoke quietly to it. A young girl inside asked whether Qin Mu did not want to help them, while a charming woman lamented that there was no righteous person in the Great Ruins willing to save her and her daughter. Qin Mu silently scoffed at the idea of himself being righteous, thinking that he was the heavenly devil cult master and that people should already celebrate whenever he refrained from doing evil. The night passed slowly as everyone in the ruins harbored different intentions. Eventually, a hen dragon among the strange beasts flew onto the roof of the dilapidated hall and crowed toward the sky. Darkness immediately receded, and sunlight from the east illuminated the mountains and the peaks outside the ruins. The sun had risen, so Qin Mu woke up and pushed Carefree sword into the sheath he had carved the previous day. He kicked the dragon Qilin awake, which also woke the 2 white bats. The dragon Qilin immediately asked for his ration. And although Qin Mu had little scarlet fire spirit pills left, he still gave him a full meal. The 2 white bats dropped from the roof after abandoning their purchases, while the 3 demon monks woke and took out clear water and biscuits made from crushed insects. As demon monks from Little Thunderclap Monastery and strange bird beasts, they were not bound by strict vegetarian rules and still enjoyed eating insects. Ding Zhu shared half of his insect biscuit with Qin Mu, who found it fragrant and crispy. The herd of strange beasts began moving, and the people in the ruins followed cautiously. Qin Mu, however, remained somewhat distracted because this place was near the western border of the Great Ruins, and he wanted to discover where the darkness disappeared. Since the darkness of the Great Ruins flowed in from the west, he believed its origin might be there and hoped that finding it could reveal the source of the Great Ruins' calamity. After leaving the ruins, Qin Mu looked back and saw the carriage following the herd. But the woman with the little red flower and the man with the white cloth around his head were gone. Instead, 2 plum blossom spotted deer pulled the carriage. The buck had white cloth wrapped around its antlers, while the doe had black cloth around her ears, gold and silver chains hanging from her chest, a little red flower on her head, and numerous gold, silver, and jade bracelets on her front legs. Qin Mu realized that the couple were actually demons. He had failed to notice this the previous day because they had no demonic aura and had assumed human forms after cultivating for a long time. He suspected that their transformation technique was an orthodox cultivation method and wondered whether they were guests from West Earth. Behind the carriage, 100 divine arts practitioners silently followed. A small head with 2 braids briefly emerged from the carriage window before 2 fair hands pulled it back and closed the window. Qin Mu withdrew his gaze and remained prepared for battle, with Carefree sword ready to leave its sheath and the flying swords in his teoti sack slowly stirring. The 2 white bats silently flew across the herd, while the 3 demon monks moved swiftly, covering great distances with every step of their talons. Ponggong So carefully observed the surroundings and noticed that the herd contained many unusually powerful strange beasts. Since the beasts had their own rules, attacking at that moment and disturbing the herd would likely cause everyone to attack them. Eventually, the herd began to disperse. The 2 deer then suddenly sprinted away with the carriage, and the 100 divine arts practitioners immediately accelerated in pursuit. They shouted for Nai Kui to stop, and vital qi surged from the carriage. Grass and trees rapidly grew, becoming enormous and filling an area of a hectare. Ancient trees pulled themselves from the ground and transformed into walking giants whose roots shook the earth whenever they stepped. Their trunks became enormous fists that smashed the pursuing divine arts practitioners away. The trees of the great ruins were already enormous, with many reaching dozens of yards high and some reaching the height of mountains. But the woman's divine art made them even more gigantic and gave them immense strength. Vines also transformed into demon-like creatures, wrapping around the divine arts practitioners and strangling them. Qin Mu was astonished because this divine art was rare and somewhat similar to the earth eon creation technique. Though even more domineering, the tree giants caused the earth and mountains to tremble as they rampaged. However, the divine arts practitioners reacted quickly and used their own divine arts. Strange white lights and soul-like but not truly spiritual forms flew from the trees and vines, causing the tree giants to collapse and the vines to wither. One practitioner caused a mountain to tremble, sending countless rocks rolling down before transforming the mountain into a giant that swung its fist at the carriage. The doe raised her hooves, causing her gold and silver bracelets to fly out and bind the mountain giant's fist, crushing it. When its other fist attacked, she stomped her feet, causing countless green grasses to grow like swords. They pierced through the gaps between the rocks, rooted themselves inside the mountain giant, and sprouted, causing the giant to break apart and collapse. The two deer immediately accelerated and pulled the carriage away. Qin Mu was deeply amazed by this divine art and asked what it was. The dragon Qilin explained that it was the divine art of True Heaven Palace in West Earth. He had once gone there with Patriarch. True Heaven Palace was the sacred ground of West Earth, where divine arts differed from those of Middle Earth. Its practitioners believed that all things possessed spirit and soul, including grass, trees, and rocks, and that everything contained its own spirit and divine treasure. Their cultivation therefore followed the path of believing that all things possessed spirit and soul. Patriarch had praised their methods as being quite good. Qin Mu admired this different path of divine arts. The ability to transform an entire mountain into a giant capable of fighting was astonishing and revealed an enormous destructive force, greatly broadening his horizons. He became excited by the destructive power and even wondered whether there were still mountains in West Earth that had not been demolished, thinking that learning such a technique would be useful for tearing down mountains and making roads. Suddenly, Ponggong So ordered an attack. His forces immediately launched their assault, sending knife pellets and countless sword lights raining toward Qin Mu. At the same time, the three shaman kings attacked and used shaman spells to pull the two white bats down from the sky. Qin Mu laughed and raised his clothing, disappearing instantly. He reappeared beside the great shamans and soldiers of barbarian D Empire, released Carefree Sword, and sent countless flying swords from his peyote sack in every direction. 8,000 swords filled the ground and floated across an area of 300 yards, with blood continuously dripping from their blades. Only two great shamans at 7 Stars Realm escaped unharmed, although they were terrified after resisting the countless sword lights. Ponggong So was shocked by Qin Mu's teleportation clothing and realized that Qin Mu had appeared beside his enemies and immediately unleashed a fatal attack. Qin Mu raised a finger, causing Carefree Sword and countless sword lights to whirl and slash toward one of the 7 Stars Realm great shamans. Golden wings appeared behind the shaman, and countless golden feather swords flew out to clash with Qin Mu's attack, overwhelming and blasting him backward. Qin Mu's clothing covered his body as he disappeared again. Then he reappeared behind the same shaman, opened his 5 fingers, and caused Carefree Sword and the other 8,000 swords to rush forward. At that moment, Ponggong So also turned and vanished. The dragon Qilin and 3 demon monks rushed over, while the 2 7 Stars Realm great shamans flew into the sky and were pursued by the 3 demon monks, who transformed into golden-winged dapungs. The dragon Qilin roared and fired a pillar of flame toward Ponggong So, forcing him to avoid it and appear beside the 3 shaman kings. The shaman kings were violently beating the 2 white bats, but the bats were extremely tough and continued jumping around even while being attacked by 1 Life and Death Realm Shaman King and 2 Celestial Being Realm Shaman Kings. Ponggong So ordered Shaman King Gongmu to deal with the 2 white bats while the other shaman kings killed the 3 demon monks, intending to eliminate Qin Mu's allies. Gongmu was a life and death realm expert and could suppress the 2 bats alone, preventing them from supporting Qin Mu. 2 celestial being realm shaman kings and 2 7 stars realm grade shamans were more than enough to kill the 3 demon monks and the dragon Qilin, since none of them had reached celestial being realm. However, Qin Mu suddenly took a black jar from his peyote sack. Pang Gongso's scalp tingled and he immediately ordered everyone to retreat before activating his teleportation spell and escaping. Although he had reached 6 directions realm, he could only teleport about 2,000 yards. When he looked back, Qin Mu had already smashed the jar, releasing extremely dense black smoke that spread across several hundred yards. Gongmu and the other 2 shaman kings hurriedly escaped the smoke and survived. But they were left frightened. Pang Gongso recognized the smoke as resembling the shaman poison he had refined in his previous life. A poison so powerful that if it contaminated a soul or primordial spirit, it would corrode the soul and rot the primordial spirit, killing even life and death realm experts within a few breaths. He initially believed Qin Mu had intended to drag everyone into death together, but then realized something was wrong. As an expert in shaman poison, Pang Gongso quickly saw that the black smoke was merely smoke and not his shaman poison. Qin Mu had apparently spent the previous night secretly creating a black jar and filling it with ordinary black smoke. Since he had 2 peyote sacks, no one had known what he was making inside one of them. Realizing that they had been tricked, Pang Gongso became furious and wanted to return to battle. But the 2 7 stars realm great shamans had already been killed by the 3 demon monks, while the 2 white bats had recovered and crawled back up. When Qin Mu took out another black jar, Pang Gongso hesitated. Qin Mu laughed and bid him farewell. Pang Gongso sneered and suddenly called out to monk Ding Ming. The 3 golden-winged dapungs transformed back into the 3 demon monks, and Ding Ming answered. Pang Gongso bowed and paid his respects, causing an apparition of a devil standing on a sacrificial altar to appear behind him and bow as well. Ding Ming cried out in shock as his body reverted to its golden-winged dapeng form. Loud cracking sounds came from his body. His 3 souls and 7 spirits split apart, and he died. Qin Mu was horrified because Ding Ming was a 7 stars realm expert who had been killed merely by having Pang Gongso pay respects to him. Qin Mu realized that this was the divine art of killing someone after learning their name. The same terrifying technique that Grandmaster had used and the reason Butcher had never dared to reveal his true name. Qin Mu wondered how such a technique could be countered. Pang Gongso then called out monk Ding Ji. Ding Ji remained silent and did not answer, but Pang Gongso still bowed toward him, while the devil apparition on the sacrificial altar also bowed. Ding Ji immediately cried out and died an unnatural death. Blood flowed from the corner of Pang Gongso's mouth as he looked toward monk Ding Ju. Ding Ju became frightened and spread his wings to flee, but Pang Gongso called his name and bowed. Ding Ju's souls and spirits immediately dispersed in midair, and his golden-winged dapeng corpse fell from the sky. Pang Gongso spat out blood, glared ruthlessly at Qin Mu, and declared that if Qin Mu had not used a false name, killing him would have been just as easy. He then turned and left with the 3 shaman kings, disappearing into the forest. Qin Mu frowned after witnessing Pang Gongso's terrifying shaman spell. Although Pang Gongso was only at the 6 directions realm, his act of paying respects had killed 3 7 stars realm golden-winged dapeng demon monks of Little Thunderclap Monastery. These demon monks possessed extraordinary cultivation, tough bodies, and stable primordial spirits, yet none could resist the divine art. Pang Gongso had once behaved like a great scholar, but repeated setbacks at Qin Mu's hands had driven him into anger, and he had now begun targeting those around Qin Mu. However, Qin Mu noticed that Pang Gongso had also suffered severe injuries after using the spell, indicating that it had an extremely powerful drawback and could not be used recklessly. Qin Mu ordered the 3 monks to be buried, then paid his respects to them and vowed to burn Pang Gongso as an offering in the future. He suddenly stopped and painted the devil that had appeared behind Pang Gongso when he used the shaman spell, carefully capturing its form, will, and grace according to Def's teachings. Qin Mu believed that the key to breaking Pang Gongso's shaman spell lay in this devil. He planned to return to the village and ask village chief Old Ma, the Heavenly Saint Cult, or the Eternal Peace Empire whether anyone recognized it. If someone could identify the devil, there might be a way to counter the spell, otherwise Qin Mu would have to eliminate Pang Gongso regardless of the consequences. That would mean attacking Roland's Golden Palace. which required first destroying all the countries on the prairie. Something Heavenly Saint cult could not currently accomplish alone and might require the emperor to send an army to raise the Golden Palace. After the two white bats recovered from their injuries, Qin Mu flew into the sky to determine their location. He could not see surging river, so he repeatedly surveyed the terrain and compared the mountains with his geographical map before determining that they were near West Heaven Palace and not far from West Earth. After traveling farther east, they reached a huge elevated piece of land that appeared to have fallen from outer space. It was covered in vegetation, ruins, broken ground, buried metal structures, and fallen or standing god statues. The area contained scattered slabs of land, ruined cities, strange beasts, and enormous metal constructions with pipes that produced melodious sounds when the wind passed through them. Qin Mu wondered how such a magnificent civilization had fallen into ruin. Because darkness could not invade this area, numerous powerful territorial strange beasts lived there, making the place dangerous. The group could only follow the sole safe route across the basin. Qin Mu personally led the way because he had grown up in great ruins and understood the habits of its strange beasts better than the dragon Qilin or the white bats. Deep inside the basin, he discovered carriage tracks that clearly belonged to West Earth's true heaven palace, along with footprints of divine arts practitioners pursuing them. The pursuers evidently understood the rules of great ruins and had followed the correct route. But their large-scale divine arts could easily provoke the territorial beasts. Qin Mu considered taking another route but found that the alternatives were even more dangerous. A huge pool contained a terrifying crocodile man-beast, while a ruined city was inhabited by two enormous crane leaders whose sword techniques made them even more dangerous. With no other safe path, Qin Mu decided to pass through the battlefield of True Heaven Palace without interfering in their family matters. In the center of the basin, 4 white rhinoceroses noticed Qin Mu's group. One female rhinoceros mocked the fat dragon Qilin for being so fat that he looked like a pig. The rhinoceros leader immediately apologized, transformed into a giant with a rhinoceros head and human body, and warned his family that Qin Mu, the white bats, and the dragon Qilin were dangerous figures surrounded by the souls of the dead. The dragon Qilin explained that white rhinoceroses were said to possess psychic abilities and could see the netherworld and dead souls, though he objected to being called a huge dog or fat. Soon, the sounds of divine arts and spirit weapons clashing came from ahead. Qin Mu cautiously approached and found the wounded practitioners of True Heaven Palace surrounding a shattered carriage. When they saw Qin Mu, they stopped attacking. A young man came forward, explained that it was a family matter, and ordered the others to open a path for Qin Mu to pass. The carriage had been destroyed. One plum blossom deer was badly injured and had reverted to its true form, while the other had already died. A blood-covered woman called Nai Kui protected her daughter and desperately begged Qin Mu to take the child and let her live. A transformed buck also grabbed Qin Mu's clothing and begged for help. But Qin Mu pulled himself free and continued forward, repeatedly telling himself that these were other people's family matters and should not be interfered with. The dragon Qilin praised him for finally becoming rational, reminding him that in the past he had constantly fought and caused trouble, forcing Patriarch to clean up his messes. Qin Mu stared ahead and questioned whether this was truly what it meant to grow up, saying that he did not want to grow up if this was the result. He then suddenly laughed and continued walking. As he moved forward, countless small swords silently flew from his peyote sack and embedded themselves in the ground, gradually forming the sword-treading mountains and rivers formation. 8,000 swords-shaped mountains and rivers before finally sinking underground together. Qin Mu pressed his hand down, concealed himself beneath his clothing, and vanished without a trace, declaring that he was unwilling to become an adult in such a manner.